villages. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble and dust.
This is a picture of destruction.
Everywhere you look in this mountaintop community, there is absolute devastation.
These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Just want to bring you these live pictures from Mar-a-Lago, where Donald Trump is leaving, heading back to Washington. It's been a busy few days where no doubt Donald Trump will have been observing European leaders meeting in London today, pledging unity and more military support from Zelensky. No doubt also he will have heard Zelensky pledge that he is prepared to make a minerals deal with Donald Trump, also suggesting that he'd be happy to return to Washington for further meetings, and also spoke about the relationship being to move past the previous meeting in the Oval Office, which was a little bit more than explosive. So that's the latest picture of Donald Trump making his way back to Washington, D.C. This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. Volodymyr Zelensky has told Sky News that he is willing to exchange his presidency for NATO membership and said he's ready to sign a deal with the US. Sir Keir Starmer has hailed a defence summit a once-in-a-generation moment for Europe and announced a £1.6 billion deal to supply thousands of air defence missiles to Ukraine. Israel has halted the flow of goods and aid into Gaza in a standoff with Hamas over ceasefire talks. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with The Spectator's political correspondent, James Heal, and journalist and author Rachel Shabby. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Financial Times reports on Britain and France leading the efforts to mediate peace in Ukraine, with Sir Keir Starmer seeking US support for European troops to enforce a ceasefire. The Eye highlights the PM pledging UK troops and aircraft for peacekeeping, and King Charles using soft power in talks with President Zelensky today. The Telegraph's headline includes the Prime Minister telling European leaders we are at a crossroads in history. The King's show of solidarity with Zelensky 48 hours after the Ukrainian president's tempestuous meeting with Donald Trump is the lead in the Mail. That's also the main story in the Metro, with headline, "Send him victorious." And an image of the King and President Zelensky dominates the front of The Sun. The Guardian reports on Starmer emphasising US cooperation to deter Russia, announcing a £1.6 billion deal to buy air defence missiles for Ukraine. The Express also leads with the PM's plans to prevent future Russian aggression. And the Star's front page focuses on the sunny start to spring ahead of Pancake Day. Yes, well, we're joined tonight by James Heal and Rachel Shabby. We won't be concentrating on the Star. I don't know what the Star is concentrating on, but we're going to start with the Guardian and the Prime Minister calling for a coalition of the willing to end the war in Ukraine. I mean, what did you make of the conference today, James?
Well, I think it's really the just latest demonstration of how Europe is trying to respond to Donald Trump's clear indication he wants to pull back from America's post-war peace commitments in Europe. And I think really was all given the urgency by that extraordinary scenes we saw on Friday at the Oval Office. And, you know, clearly it was quite something to see the Prime Minister there convening basically all of the NATO countries, apart from the United States, there in the chair at Lancaster House. And now it all comes down to, we've had the talk, and he says there, you know, we can't keep just talking, we need to get some action. And so now it comes to the week ahead. And, you know, you've got Ursula von der Leyen there, unveiling her plan to kind of rearm Europe and to potentially look at things around the fiscal rules about the European Union. And really, I think we're going to have to see a bit more detail over the next couple of days, because if Friday wasn't a wake-up call, you don't know what will be.
And the Prime Minister's saying that they're at a crossroads of history, Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, I think James is right that we do need to see some more meat on the bones of this. However, it is also true that, you know, today's show of support from all these global leaders to Zelensky was in stark contrast to the just naked bullying and aggression that we saw at the White House on Friday. So in terms of the visuals and the symbolism, the support was very, very present and very overt. And that was important in and of itself. But I do think there does need to be more substance now. Obviously, that might play out over the next week. We have, as you say, got Starmer announcing a deal that's a $1.6 billion commitment to allow Ukraine to buy more air defence missiles, which is significant. But he hasn't managed to get other countries to pledge more in terms of finance or military support. He is talking more clearly about European countries coming together to present some kind of military backing for a ceasefire agreement on the ground and in the air. But we don't have the substance of what that looks like. We also don't have the substance of what that ceasefire would look like. And so I do think this next week we want to see details on both counts.
Although, James, he did say that there were countries that signed up to this coalition of the willing, but he wouldn't give the details as to who they were. But we don't know whether they're the majority of countries or not.
Well, I mean, clearly, to replace the American president in Europe, it's going to have to be a big coalition. It can't just be the United Kingdom and France, for instance, who seem to be the ones who've made these commitments today. I mean, the only figure that's been flying around is the $1.6 billion that Keir Starmer has pledged in terms of building those missiles and creating those jobs in Belfast. Look, I mean, for the past 80 years or so, NATO, the purpose of it was once described by the British NATO General Secretary as to keep the Russians out, the Americans in and the Germans down. All of those three pillars of post-war planning are now crumbling before our eyes. And in order to replace that, we need to do what we should have done many years ago, which is to step up. And I think it's striking, perhaps, this line that Keir Starmer is using, like coalition of the willing, which obviously channels to American minds memories of 2003 and Iraq. Of course, back then, of course, most of the European countries didn't join the US in their efforts, and the UK was very much an outlier on that. And it remains to be seen, really, if belatedly you're going to have people like von der Leyen, who, when she was German Defence Minister, of course, was in charge of an army that had to use broomsticks for exercises. So it's a belated wake-up call, but, you know, how many wake-up calls can a patient have before you can conclude it's brain dead?
Rachel, in terms of the detail, the Daily Telegraph reporting what Emmanuel Macron's had to say, and that is that France and Britain are proposing a one-month truce in Ukraine, in the air, at sea, and soldiers would only be deployed on the ground in a second phase.
Well, absolutely. So I think I think this speaks to the tension that we're seeing in that meeting. So much as they want to present a united front, by the way, I think coalition of the willing is a really unfortunate term given the negative associations with the illegal 2003 invasion of Iraq, really badly judged. But I think that this is where we see the divisions, because it would seem that Britain and Italy are kind of working on the assumption that they're going to get the US's buy-in, that we're going to work with Trump, appease Trump, whatever.
Do you mean Britain and Italy or Britain and France?
No, I mean Britain and Italy.
Right.
So Meloni and Starmer are both more amenable to bringing Trump aboard. They think that he can be appeased, mollified, whatever. There is disagreement within European countries over that. I don't think Germany, for instance, is particularly keen on that, and I'd say other nations aren't. And that potentially feeds into what we're seeing in terms of the lack of substance over what a ceasefire agreement should look like. I mean, if you are of the mind that Europe really has to race ahead now, get ahead of Trump doing anything, such as starting to make overtures towards Russia, then you would want to get a ceasefire agreement done quickly, right? You would want to have that on the table so you could say to the US, OK, you take it or leave it, but this is what we've got. If you think that the US can be collaborated with, for want of a better word, then you're going to not put so much substance on that ceasefire arrangement. And I think that's what's happened. That's what Starmer is hoping for. But again, I think that is ill-judged.
OK, Rachel and James, we must leave it there for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, the King's show of solidarity for the Ukrainian president. Stay with us.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
Is it crazy? It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat.
It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island.
The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre.
The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin.
Jerry, any comment on the judge's decisions? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry?
This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial.
Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach Simon Harris.
Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as President and Leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland. Sky News, get the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast. It's starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, the Spectator's political correspondent, James Heal, and journalist and author Rachel Shabby. James, take us back to the Daily Telegraph, because there was a line that you wanted to pull out regarding Peter Mandelson, who's not been in the job for very long, but already seemingly causing a bit of a stir.
Yeah, so this is the comment piece on the front by Charles Moore, who's former Telegraph editor, and he makes the point that clearly today we were demonstrating that the heart of the United Kingdom was with President Zelensky. We had the King there at Sandringham, but he asks whether the head is elsewhere in the policy, in terms of policy making, and he points out this interview that Lord Mandelson, our new ambassador to Washington, has done, in which he urges Zelensky to give unequivocal backing to Trump's initiative. And also elsewhere, it's in the main story as well, talking about how Mandelson's urging Zelensky to basically go along with Trump's offer. Now, this was an interview he did earlier today, Lord Mandelson, and this was then shared by the White House's official response team, Rapid Response Room 47 on Twitter and X, etc. Clearly, the White House and the Team Trump are then seizing on these comments. And so we've talked earlier in this programme about divides, etc., between different European countries. There could potentially be a split here, and I think in terms of the political angle, that's the thing to look at in terms of the UK, because both Kemi Badenoch, Keir Starmer are united on the issue of Ukraine, but the potential is Peter Mandelson, when he says these comments, playing to the American political audience, or is he actually sort of freelancing on his own policy? So I think that could be one of the stories that comes out over the next couple of weeks or so.
Rachel, do you agree?
Yeah, I think potentially. Again, I think it's another ill-judged statement. I suspect, look, for all of these countries, what they're doing is very much chiming with public opinion. So Starmer, who is not sky high in the polling, I think it's safe to say, on domestic issues, is certainly on surer footing when it comes to Ukraine, for which there is overwhelming public support. And indeed, there is much more support for standing up to Trump than potentially he does, and potentially Mandelson says he shouldn't. So, you know, I think that one of the things that is very clear here is that these European countries, when they are standing with Ukraine, also have popular support, because it's very clear to people. This was a completely unprompted, illegal invasion by Russia, who has since been engaged in a horrific war.
Rachel, let's just move on, because we wanted to get onto the King show of solidarity, front page of the Mail, James.
Yeah, well, we were guessing backstage how many front pages this photograph would be on, and I think we got to 6, and I think we got it spot on. I mean, look at that. Those pictures will say so much. You can see Zelensky genuinely beaming there, and I think that, without saying a single word, King Charles probably has said more than 1,000 tweets could ever.
Yes, critical soft power. James and Rachel, thank you so much. See you in the 11 o'clock hour. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, the top stories.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Sky News get the full story first. Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
This is Sky News at 11 o'clock. The headlines this evening. Ukraine's president says he's willing to exchange his presidency for NATO membership and insists he's ready to sign a deal with the US. Earlier in the day, a promise from the UK to defend any peace deal with boots on the ground and planes in the air.
We are at a crossroads in history today. This is not a moment for more talk. It's time to act. Time to step up and lead.
And an appointment with the King after a tumultuous 48 hours for Ukraine's president in his quest for just and lasting peace. Also tonight, Israel halts the flow of goods and aid into Gaza in a standoff over ceasefire talks.
Are you English?
No, I'm not English. Why?
Plus, we'll look ahead to tonight's Oscars with Emilia Perez leading the field with 13 nominations. And we'll have a full look at the front pages in our press preview at 11:30. Good evening. Volodymyr Zelensky has now left the UK after 2 days of frantic diplomacy. In stark contrast to his hostile meetings at the White House on Friday, he received a warmer welcome here in London. As well as smiles, he won assurances from the UK, France and other European countries in Europe that they would provide troops to help defend any peace deal in Ukraine. We'll have more on the pledges made today in a moment. But first, President Zelensky told Sky News there was no chance of handing territory over to Moscow, that he was ready to sign a mineral deal with Donald Trump and to meet him again in what he described as a constructive format.
Hi. Volodymyr Zelensky would have known his trip to the White House was likely to be challenging. But no one could have predicted just how contentious it was going to be.
We're late? No, you're just great.
But while the toll of the last few days can't be underestimated, tonight, as we sat down with the Ukrainian leader at the end of his emergency trip to the UK, there was a palpable sense of relief following the reassurance that Europe stands with him.
Okay.
Was there a moment sitting there that you thought, this is going really badly wrong? Did you feel that in some way you had mishandled the president? There was something you had done that was wrong, and do you regret that? Or if you don't, do you think that you walked into an ambush?
I do not believe it is right when such conversations are absolutely open, because the emotions or information or etc. the foes can take advantage of them.